Mia touched Jeffrey on the shoulder, moved in very close as if to kiss him, and whispered, "I hardly ever wear panties. Does that answer your question?" Jeffrey inhaled through an open mouth and clenched teeth. Diego pulled Mia aside and said something to her as they looked at Jeffrey and smiled. "Well, Jeffrey, today we'll start with a full body massage and facial. Now, it is not unusual that you will become aroused, so don't be embarrassed." And on that note, that's where I'm going to stop. This is the debut novel of Hartley Holder, a Barbadian who's just written a book called Addictive. And trust me, it is. Hi, Hartley.
Hi, how are you?
First and foremost, tell us a little bit about Hartley Holder.
Well, I say we left Barbados in 1973. My father was a ship's engineer, and we emigrated to Canada. And the whole brood of us actually went there.
How many is this brood?
4 of us, actually. So my brother and my 2 sisters and myself. And settled in Toronto. I think the second day after we got to Canada, I was in school. And that's how we got there, I should say. After that, went to high school, studied physics and applied arts, that sort of thing, but ended up going into jewelry and goldsmithing and silversmithing and arts and crafts and all that kind of stuff when I started.
Well, that's quite interesting. How did you get into jewelry making? Because I'm thinking you go from goldsmith to writing?
Well, actually, when I in high school, there was a course actually which was called industrial science. So all these chemistries, math that you would take, I needed something to kind of clear the mind. So using arts and craft, industrial arts and stuff, that actually helped. And I had this teacher called Mr. Fulcher, and he passed away actually, and they asked me to design a sculpture, which I did, and that was my first foray into the arts kind of thing. And then after that, I decided that I wasn't going to do science or engineering like what my dad and what my parents wanted, because my brother's an engineer. I have nephews who are engineers, but I just wanted to apply the sciences that we had or that I learned into something that was more concrete, which a lot of people don't know about jewelry actually is it's pure science.
Wow. So what's it like being a jewelry maker? And I was looking at your bio, you're actually a bench jeweler. So tell me, what does that mean?
You create things from scratch. Someone comes in, I used to have people would come in and they will say, well, I want you to make a ring for me. And I said, okay, what else is there? So what kind of ring? Or they will bring in a design or a sketch or a photograph and say, well, I want this, or I want X, or I want Y. But there were other people who would come in also who would ask me to make pieces of jewelry. They call it personal jewelry. And a few ladies who came in, for example, there was one lady who came in, she was a librarian, very, very staunch, very,
proper.
Very proper. And she said to me, I want you to make a piece of jewelry for me. So I said, okay, sure, not a problem. She says, well, I need a sketch or something like that. So she had this little sketch and she, showed it to me, and she was kind of embarrassed. And I said, oh yeah, I can make that. But I said, 80% down, no returns on this piece of jewelry because it's personal jewelry, and that was it. Anyway, so she came back and she tried it on, she loved it, and then I had this following of people who would come to make pieces of jewelry that was kind of different, and it just went on from there. But that was the fun part sometimes. And then the other parts we would make wedding bands, engagement rings, you name it, we did it. So it was fun. Yeah.
So is it from the personal jewelry then that you got into story writing?
No, I can't say that. What I can say is when I was in Barbados and going to St. Stephen's, before I went to Combe-Mare for 2 years, at St. Stephen's there was Miss Brooms, and also too I had an aunt that was there also too, but learning how to write, that sort of thing. And I remember there was an incident where one of our neighbors, the pig got away from his staff. So anyway, I wrote this thing about Mr. Denny's pig getting away, and showed it to my parents, read it to my dad, read it to next door neighbors, my grandfather, not my grandmother, great aunt, and stuff like that, and they laughed. So I thought, oh jeez, that's not. So I never wrote that much afterwards until I would say probably about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I said the same thing to my mom. I said, I was thinking of writing a book. And she says, well, you're always a good writer. I said, no, you guys laughed at me when I wrote the book. She goes, no, we laughed at you because it was, you could see it was vivid, it was funny, and it actually was a pretty good book. So I went, oh, okay. So then I started. So when I was writing this book, Addictive, Given into Extreme, it wasn't really, there were a couple of other books that I was writing, and this one, in the back of my mind, kept coming out. It was really, really strong, very powerful, but the language was earthy, and I wasn't comfortable with that earthy language, but I had to write it because it was just, I couldn't finish the other books. This was always in my head, so it came out first.
I've read at least about 25% of the book so far, and I really love it. As you said, it's very earthy. It is very addictive. Is any of this coming from personal experience?
No. I think, and everyone, maybe in subconscious, but I think what happens, especially when you started with the characters, I hear writers talk about how characters take on a life of their own, and once that happened, once you started off with the first character, I knew what was going to happen at certain points of it. And then these other characters came in. And here's this person that, how does someone become addicted? Everyone keeps thinking, well, he looks like such a nice person, and all of a sudden we didn't know that he did X or Y.
This other life.
But I think all of us have that, that little subconscious where we think things. We don't do it, but we think it. And unfortunately, he had this. It just gradually came out because of divorces and domestic violence in his family, or that kind of stuff, and it just kind of grew in. And he figured by suppressing it, he didn't really see that, I should say, but it just gradually came out of him. And then once it did, he couldn't put it back in the bottle, sort of thing. It's like a genie, and that was impossible for him to stop.
How long did it take you to write the book?
Probably about a year, maybe. A year and a half sort of thing. How long did it take me to publish it? That was another thing, because once I read it again, I was kind of embarrassed by how it fit together, and I just thought that I couldn't really see what would my parents think, what would my brother think, all that kind of stuff, what would my friends think. But I sent it off, and I think in about 2 days, I got this thing back saying, characters, the way the book flowed, I think you should, really just do some editing, and that's it. And then that's where the editing came in. And then even up to the last day before I pressed that publish button, I kind of just sat there, looked at it, walked around, got the cold sweats, and then started. But once it was published, and I felt good about it, yeah. And I knew that I had to write the other books and finish the other books also, too. So,
what's been the response like, and what do your family think about the book?
Well, the response has been very good in a lot of ways. Some of my friends have said, one lady said to me, well, my iPad ran out of juice, so I had to actually put it back in and that sort of thing. Said, but she couldn't finish the book because I think she didn't have enough battery power or something. But she said afterwards, this is an amazing book. She says, but it's soft porn. I go, well, not really. And then my parents read it, which I thought this was going to be, because I didn't want but I sent them a book probably about 6 months after it was published. And, she said, it's a good book, but I know you were so whatless, though. But I said, really? She goes, no. She goes, well, but she said, they read a lot of books because they're retired now. And they said, she said to me, I can't help comparing the way this book goes together and what we read out there. And I don't understand how they can become #1 sellers and stuff. I said, well, because they advertise. She said, well, why aren't you advertising? I go, well, I'll get there one of these days. But yeah, it's the reaction has been very, very positive, I must say, yes.
So what are the other books in the pipeline?
Other books basically is about jewelry of mystical jewelers. I mean, that's where I'm from, so that's what I would write about. But there are always characters, how shall we say, mystical jewelers. In the old days, ancient time, a jeweler was almost like a doctor, or almost like a high priestess, or a high priest. Vulcan, for example, the god of war and god of underworld, he actually was, as a lot of people would say, if you're making a piece of wrought iron or metal or something like that, then you used to say a prayer or whisper something that says, "No, you got to help me out here." So this book, Mystical Jeweler, that's coming out is going to be a little different. It's about this guy who is reluctant to accept what he actually is. He's a jeweler, but he's not really a jeweler, But he has to fix certain things that happens in the world, and that's it. That's a little bit.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. This has really been a great read. I'm certainly going to make sure that I finish the book. Where can I get it?
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, most of the ebooks basically, Indigo, most bookstores actually. If you log online with the ISBN number, you'll see Addictive will come up, and you can purchase online actually, which is fastest, yeah.
Well, Hartley, we look forward to the rest of your books. I'm going to continue to finish reading this one because, listen, this kept me up. I literally could not put it down. It was such a great read.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
That's Hartley Holder, just written his first book and had it published, Addictive. You got to go online, Hartley Holder, Addictive. Put it in on Amazon.com. Get yourself a copy. Make sure that your iPad, Kindle, or whatever your e-format is fully charged up, because I promise you, you will not be able to put it down. Think 50 Shades of Grey, only Caribbean.